The morning sky was still gray when the sound of light rain began to tap against the tin roof of a small house on the edge of town. Inside that house, a man named Daniel sat at the old wooden table, a half-empty cup of coffee in front of him. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his hands rough from years of hard work. He stared at a few bills spread out on the table. Rent, electricity, school fees, all stacked like reminders of how hard life had become. His wife, gently folding laundry in the corner, looked over at him and gave a small smile. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. They both knew what was on his mind, money or the lack of it. Their 2 children, still young enough to dream without worry, laughed softly in the next room as they got ready for school. Daniel listened to their voices and felt something warm in his chest. No matter how tired he was, their laughter always gave him strength. He took another sip of his coffee, cold now, and stood up. "I'll be back before lunch," he said. His wife nodded, and he picked up his old jacket, the one that smelled faintly of oil and rain, and stepped outside. The sky looked heavy, clouds hanging low, promising more rain. His old pickup truck waited near the front gate. The paint was chipped. The door made a squeaking sound when opened, and the engine coughed before it started. But it still moved, and for Daniel that was enough. He worked wherever work could be found, repairing engines, painting fences, carrying supplies, anything that could earn a few dollars. But lately things had been slow. The factory nearby had closed and people were spending less. Even those who needed repairs often said, "Next week maybe." As he drove toward town, he passed familiar sights, small shops, a bakery with a sign that hadn't been repainted in years, kids running with umbrellas too small to keep them dry. He waved at the old man who sold fruit by the roadside. Life was quiet in this part of town. Everyone knew each other, and everyone shared the same struggle. By mid-morning, the drizzle turned into heavier rain. Daniel stopped by a workshop he sometimes worked at, hoping there might be something for him. The owner, a kind but tired man named Rick, shook his head slowly. "Sorry, Daniel. Nothing today. Business is slow. Maybe next week?" Daniel nodded with a faint smile, pretending it didn't bother him. But deep inside he felt that familiar weight pressing down on his chest. He thanked Rick, climbed back into his truck, and just sat there for a few minutes watching the rain roll down the windshield. He thought about the unpaid bills again. He thought about his kids' shoes, already worn out from school. He thought about how his wife often ate less at dinner, pretending she wasn't hungry so the kids could have more. "Something will come," he whispered to himself. He always said that. And somehow he always believed it, or at least tried to. He decided to drive around, maybe find a small job somewhere. A few miles down the road, he saw a sign for a construction site. Maybe they needed a hand, but when he got there, the guard told him they had enough workers. Daniel thanked him anyway and drove off again, his wipers squeaking across the glass. By noon, the rain came harder. The sky darkened as if it were late evening. Daniel parked near a small food stall and ordered the cheapest meal, a bowl of noodles and tea. The stall owner, an old lady who had known him for years, smiled softly. "Hard day?" she asked. He nodded, returning the smile. "Just another day." "You have a good heart, Daniel," she said. "Things will turn around. You'll see." He didn't reply, but her words stayed with him as he ate quietly, listening to the rain hitting the plastic roof of the stall. After finishing his meal, he paid and stepped outside. The rain was relentless now. Water ran along the streets, forming small streams that carried fallen leaves and bits of trash. Daniel stood for a moment, looking at the wet road, then turned toward the direction of home. He had tried enough for the day, and the thought of seeing his kids again made him smile. As he drove, he noticed his old truck beginning to make a strange noise. He sighed, gently tapping the dashboard as if talking to an old friend. "Not now, buddy. Just get me home." The sound faded after a while, and Daniel relaxed a little. He turned the radio on, but all that came through was static. The rain was falling harder than ever now. A few miles from home, the road curved sharply near a field. Through the curtain of rain, Daniel noticed something. A car stopped by the side of the road, hazard lights blinking faintly. A man stood next to it, holding an umbrella, looking under the hood. The sight made Daniel slow down. He could tell right away that it was an expensive car, newer, shiny even under the rain, the kind that never parked in this part of town. For a moment, Daniel thought of just driving past. He was tired, soaked, and all he wanted was to be home. But something inside him didn't let him. He pulled over a few meters ahead and turned off the engine. The rain hit his jacket hard as he stepped out, but he didn't care. He walked toward the man. "Everything all right?" Daniel asked, raising his voice above the sound of the rain. The man looked up, surprised. "The car just died. I think it's the battery, but I'm not sure. I called for help, but no one's come yet." Daniel looked under the hood. Even through the rain, he could see the problem. A loose cable. "Simple enough to fix. I can take a look," Daniel said. The man hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. Within minutes, Daniel had tightened the cable and wiped his wet hands on his jacket. He asked the man to try starting the engine. The car came to life with a soft hum. The man's face lit up. "You fixed it," he said, relief in his voice. Daniel smiled faintly. "Just a loose wire. Happens sometimes." The man reached into his pocket and pulled out some money. "Here, please, take this." "You saved me." Daniel shook his head. "It's all right. You don't have to. Please, at least something for your time," the man insisted. But Daniel stepped back, water dripping from his hair. "No need. Just glad you're back on the road." The man looked at him, this stranger standing in the rain soaked to the bone, but still refusing money. He nodded slowly as if memorizing his face. "Thank you." "Really?" he said before getting into his car and driving away. Daniel watched as the car disappeared down the road. The rain continued to fall, cold and heavy, but inside, Daniel felt something warm. He didn't know why, but helping someone, even a stranger, always made him feel lighter. He walked back to his old pickup, started the engine, and drove home, humming softly to himself. The rain no longer bothered him. He didn't know that this small act, done on a rainy afternoon with no reward in mind, would soon change his life in ways he could never imagine. When he reached home, his kids came running to the door laughing, holding out towels for him. His wife smiled when she saw him, though she frowned at his wet clothes. "Out helping someone again?" she asked. He grinned, wiping water from his face. "Yeah, just a car on the side of the road. Poor guy didn't know a cable from a hose." She shook her head, half smiling. "You and your heart," she said. "One day that kindness will come back to you." Daniel laughed lightly and looked out at the rain. "Maybe," he said. But deep down, he didn't really expect much. Life had taught him to work hard, not wait for miracles. That night, as he lay in bed listening to the rain tapping on the roof, he thought about the man with the fancy car and wondered where he might be now. He closed his eyes, tired but peaceful. The world still felt heavy, but his heart felt lighter than it had in days. He didn't know it then, but this small moment of kindness, this one decision to stop, had already set something in motion. Something that would soon change everything he thought he knew about luck, life, and the power of doing good without expecting anything in return. The rain kept falling through the night, soft and steady, as if washing away the struggles of the day, and for the first time in a long while, Daniel drifted into sleep with a quiet sense of hope. The next day began quietly. The rain that had poured all night finally stopped, leaving the air cool and clean. The streets were still wet and puddles reflected the pale morning light. Daniel stood outside his small house, his jacket hanging loosely on his shoulders, watching his children play near the front steps. Their laughter filled the yard, and for a moment, it made him forget about everything else, the bills, the long days, the endless struggle to stay afloat. His wife stepped out with a small cup of tea and handed it to him. "You didn't sleep well," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Just thinking about things. Maybe I'll go into town today, see if there's any work." She nodded. "Be careful. The roads are still wet." Daniel sipped the warm tea and looked at the sky. The clouds were still thick, but there was a hint of sunlight breaking through. It gave him a strange kind of comfort, like a promise that even after the darkest night, light always found its way back. After breakfast, he packed his small tool bag and headed out. His old pickup truck started with its usual cough and shake, but it got going eventually. He drove slowly, the tires splashing through the puddles that lined the narrow road. On the way, his thoughts wandered back to the man he had helped the night before, the one with the fancy car. He didn't know why, but that short encounter stayed in his mind. The man had been polite, a little surprised that someone would help him in the rain without expecting anything in return. Daniel smiled to himself. He hadn't thought much of it at the time. To him, helping someone in need wasn't a big deal. It was just the right thing to do. Still, he wondered if the man had made it home safely. Maybe he lived in one of those big houses across town where the lights never went out, and dinner was always warm. Daniel didn't envy him. He just found it strange how two people could live such different lives in the same world. By noon, he had checked 3 small garages, hoping for work. Each time the answer was the same. Sorry, nothing right now. It was frustrating, but he tried not to let it show. Life had taught him that complaining didn't fix anything. He parked his truck by a small food stall near the main road. The smell of fried food and soup filled the air. The owner, an old lady with kind eyes, recognized him immediately. "Daniel, the usual?" she asked. He smiled. "Yes, please. And maybe a little extra tea. It's been a long morning." As he ate, the sky darkened again. The wind picked up and he could tell another round of rain was coming. He finished quickly, thanked the lady, and started heading home before the storm returned. He had only driven a few minutes when he noticed something in the rearview mirror. A black car following closely behind him. It flashed its headlights once, twice. Daniel thought maybe the driver wanted to overtake him, so he pulled over slightly. But instead of passing, the car slowed down and stopped right behind him. The door opened and a man stepped out with an umbrella. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. It was the same man from last night, the one he had helped in the rain. The man walked over, smiling. "Hey there. You're the one who helped me fix my car, right?" Daniel nodded, a little surprised. "Yes, sir. I remember you. Is everything okay with the car?" The man laughed softly. "Yes, it's been running perfectly. Actually, I've been looking for you." "For me?" Daniel asked, confused. The man nodded again. "Yes, I never got the chance to thank you properly yesterday. You didn't even tell me your name." "Daniel," he said simply. "Daniel," the man repeated thoughtfully. "I'm Mr. Andrews. You really saved me last night. It was raining hard and I didn't know what to do. I still can't believe you refused the money I offered." Daniel shrugged. It didn't feel right to take money for helping someone in trouble. "I just did what anyone would do," Mr. Andrews chuckled. "Not everyone would have stopped in that weather. Most people would have just driven past. That's why I came to find you. I wanted to thank you properly." He reached into his coat and pulled out a white envelope. "Please take this. It's just a small token of appreciation." Daniel shook his head immediately. "No, I can't accept that. I told you I didn't help for money." Mr. Andrews looked at him curiously. "You're a rare man, Daniel. Most people wouldn't turn down money." Daniel smiled. "Maybe, but I'm used to working for what I earn." Mr. Andrews studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right. If you won't take the envelope, then at least meet me at my office tomorrow morning. I want to discuss something that might be good for you." Daniel blinked, unsure how to respond. "Your office? What for?" Mr. Andrews smiled. "You'll see. Let's just say I have an idea. Something that could help both of us. Come around 10 in the morning." He took a business card from his pocket and handed it to Daniel. "That's the address. Don't worry, it's not far from here." Daniel took the card hesitantly. The name printed on it looked professional, with a company logo that said Andrews Auto Group. He turned it over in his hands. "I don't know, sir. I'm just a small-time mechanic. I'm not sure I belong in a place like yours." Mr. Andrews smiled kindly. "Don't underestimate yourself. You have something most people forget, honesty. Come tomorrow, Daniel. You might be surprised." Before Daniel could say anything more, Mr. Andrews gave him a nod and returned to his car. The engine purred quietly before the vehicle disappeared down the wet road. Daniel stood there for a long time, holding the business card. The rain began to fall again, light and steady. He looked at the card once more, as if trying to decide whether it was real. Finally, he tucked it carefully into his pocket and climbed back into his truck. When he got home, his wife noticed his quiet expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said playfully. Daniel smiled and handed her the card. "The man from last night found me again. He wants me to meet him tomorrow at his office." She took the card, read it slowly, and looked back at him. "And what does he want?" "He said he might have something for me." "I'm not sure what that means." Her eyes softened. "Maybe it's something good, Daniel. Maybe this is the moment you've been waiting for." He sighed. I don't want to get my hopes up. You know how these things go, she smiled gently. Sometimes good things come when you least expect them. You did something kind without expecting anything back. Maybe this is life returning the favor. That night, Daniel lay awake for a long time. The sound of rain tapping against the roof filled the quiet room. He thought about Mr. Andrews, his confident voice, his clean suit, the calm way he spoke. People like that didn't usually cross paths with someone like Daniel. He imagined what the office might look like. Tall glass windows, polished floors, people wearing nice clothes. He thought about how out of place he might feel there. Then again, what did he have to lose? When morning came, he woke before sunrise. His wife had already prepared a simple breakfast: eggs, bread, and a cup of tea. She looked at him proudly. "You look nervous," she teased. "A little," he admitted, adjusting his shirt. It was one of his few clean ones, neatly ironed. "I just don't know what to expect." "You'll be fine," she said. "Just be yourself." The drive to the address took nearly an hour. The roads were still damp and the air smelled of rain. As he entered the city, Daniel noticed how different everything looked. Wide streets, bright signs, tall buildings made of glass and steel. He felt small but also curious. Finally, he found the building. The sign in front read Andrews Auto Group, just like the card said. He parked his old truck beside a row of shiny cars and took a deep breath before walking inside. The lobby was bright and spotless. People in uniforms moved quickly, talking politely, typing on computers. A woman at the front desk looked up and smiled. "Good morning, sir. Can I help you?" "Yes," Daniel said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm here to see Mr. Andrews." She checked her computer, then smiled again. "Of course. He's expecting you. Please have a seat." Daniel sat in a soft chair, his hands resting on his knees. He looked around the room, feeling like he had stepped into another world. Everything was modern and clean, so different from the small workshops he usually worked in. After a few minutes, a tall man in a suit appeared and called his name. "Mr. Andrews will see you now." Daniel followed him down a hallway lined with framed photos of cars and smiling employees. At the end was a large office with wide windows overlooking the city. Mr. Andrews stood by the desk, smiling warmly when Daniel walked in. "Daniel, I'm glad you came," he said. "Please sit." Daniel sat down quietly. "You said you wanted to talk about something?" "Yes," Mr. Andrews said, leaning forward. "Yesterday when you helped me, I saw something in you that I don't often see anymore: honesty and kindness. I've been looking for someone to manage one of my smaller service branches, and I think you might be the right person." Daniel froze. "Me, a manager? I've never done anything like that before." Mr. Andrews smiled. "You can learn. What I can't teach is character. And you already have that. You know cars, you understand hard work, and you care about people. That's what matters most." For a moment, Daniel couldn't find his voice. "I don't know what to say," he finally whispered. "Say you'll think about it," Mr. Andrews said kindly. "Come by next week and we'll go over the details. You'll get proper training, a fair salary, and benefits for your family. You deserve this, Daniel." As Daniel left the office that day, his heart felt lighter than it had in years. The rain had started again, soft and calm, but this time he didn't mind. For the first time in a long while, The morning sun rose quietly behind a blanket of thin clouds, casting a soft golden light through the small window of Daniel's home. He woke up earlier than usual that day, not because of an alarm, but because his mind was restless with thoughts of what had happened the day before. He still couldn't quite believe it. A man he barely knew, a complete stranger he'd helped in the rain, had offered him a chance to manage a service center. It sounded too good to be true. Part of him wanted to celebrate, but another part whispered that things like this didn't happen to people like him. His wife noticed the distant look on his face as she set breakfast on the table. "You're quiet this morning," she said softly. Daniel smiled weakly. "Just thinking about everything. It feels strange. Good, but strange." She poured him a cup of tea and sat down across from him. "Sometimes life surprises us when we least expect it. Maybe this is one of those times." Daniel nodded but didn't answer right away. He stared at the steam rising from his cup and finally said, "I'm scared to hope too much. I've seen hopes fade before." His wife reached over and gently held his hand. "Whatever happens, you already did something good. You helped someone without expecting anything. That alone means you've done the right thing." Her words gave him comfort. He smiled. feeling the warmth of her hand and the steadiness of her faith in him. Later that morning, Daniel decided to visit the workshop Mr. Andrews had mentioned. He wanted to see what kind of place it was. He didn't tell anyone he was coming. He just wanted to look around quietly without expectations. The workshop was about an hour away on the edge of the city. The drive there was filled with mixed emotions, excitement, nervousness, and disbelief. He passed new neighborhoods, tall buildings, and shiny cars that seemed like they belonged to another world. When he reached the address, he slowed down. It wasn't as large or fancy as the main office he had visited before. It was a medium-sized garage with a big metal gate and a faded sign that read Andrews Auto Service. Several mechanics worked under the roof, engines humming, tools clinking. Daniel parked across the street and watched for a while. The place looked busy but organized. Workers moved with purpose. Customers waited patiently, and a man in a white shirt, maybe the supervisor, was checking a clipboard. Daniel felt both impressed and intimidated. He wondered if he could really handle a place like this. He imagined being in charge, giving instructions, dealing with customers, solving problems. It felt impossible. He had always been the one taking orders, never the one giving them. Still, something in him stirred. A quiet, small voice that said maybe he could do it. Maybe with time he could learn. He stayed there for a while before heading back home. The whole drive, he couldn't stop thinking about how his life could change if this opportunity turned out to be real. But he also reminded himself not to get carried away. He had been disappointed too many times before. When he reached home, his kids ran to him, laughing and shouting. His youngest held up a small drawing she had made of their family, all smiling, standing beside a truck under a sunny sky. Daniel looked at it and felt his chest tighten. For their sake, he had to try. Even if it scared him, he couldn't let fear keep him in the same place forever. That night, as the rain returned softly outside, Daniel lay awake again. But this time it wasn't worry that kept him up, it was wonder. What if this was the start of something good? What if, for once, things were finally going to turn around? The next morning, he got ready early. Mr. Andrews had told him to come by later in the week, but Daniel decided to visit sooner. He wanted to show that he was serious. When he reached the main office again, the receptionist greeted him with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mr. Daniel. Mr. Andrews will be happy to see you," she called upstairs, and a few minutes later he was led into the familiar office with tall windows and the view of the city. Mr. Andrews stood near his desk, looking cheerful as ever. "Daniel," he said with a smile, "I didn't expect you today, but I'm glad you came." "I hope I'm not disturbing you, sir," Daniel said politely. "Not at all," Mr. Andrews replied, motioning for him to sit. "I was actually going to call you later today." He opened a file on his desk and handed Daniel a few papers. "This is the service center I told you about. It's one of our smaller branches, but it's important. The last manager retired, and I've been looking for someone dependable. The team there is good, but they need strong guidance." Daniel took the papers carefully, scanning them with uncertain eyes. "Sir, I don't know much about management or office work. I've only ever worked with my hands." Mr. Andrews smiled patiently. "That's exactly why I think you'll do well. You understand what real work means. You've been on the floor fixing engines, talking to people. You know what customers need, and you know how to treat workers with respect. That's leadership." Daniel looked up, unsure what to say. No one had ever spoken about him like that before. People usually just saw him as a poor mechanic trying to make ends meet. But here was a man who saw something more. Mr. Andrews continued, "Of course, I don't expect you to handle everything right away. You'll work with one of our trainers for a few weeks. Once you're ready, you'll take over officially. The pay is good, and your family will have health benefits too." Daniel swallowed hard, his throat dry. He could barely find words. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you." Mr. Andrews leaned back with a kind smile. "Just keep doing what you did that night. Be honest, work hard, and help people when you can. That's all I ask." For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt his eyes grow wet. He quickly looked down, pretending to read the papers again. He didn't want to look weak, but deep inside he knew this moment would stay with him forever. After their meeting, Mr. Andrews walked him downstairs and introduced him to one of the supervisors who would train him. The man named Peter shook Daniel's hand firmly. "We'll start fresh on Monday," he said. "You'll do fine, I can already tell." When Daniel drove home that day, the world looked brighter. The roads he had driven so many times before suddenly felt new. He rolled down the window, letting the wind hit his face. The same air that once felt heavy now carried a quiet joy. At home, his wife saw the look in his eyes before he even said a word. "It's good news, isn't it?" she asked. Daniel nodded, unable to hide his smile. "He's giving me the job. Training starts Monday." She covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, Daniel, I told you your kindness would come back to you." He laughed softly and hugged her. "I still can't believe it. It feels like a dream." That evening, their small house was filled with laughter. The children clapped and danced around the table when they heard the news. Daniel sat quietly watching them, his heart swelling with gratitude. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was just surviving. He felt like he was truly living. Over the next few days, Daniel prepared himself. He cleaned his tools, organized his small box of belongings, and even fixed up his old truck. His wife helped him iron his shirts and polish his shoes. The excitement in the house was gentle but real, the kind that made everyone smile for no reason. When Monday finally came, Daniel woke before sunrise. He took a deep breath, looked at his reflection in the cracked mirror, and smiled faintly. "You can do this," he whispered to himself. As he drove toward the workshop where his new journey would begin, he thought about everything that had led to this: the long nights, the struggles, the rain, the small act of kindness that started it all. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. Life had given him a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. The rain clouds gathered again as he approached the city, but Daniel didn't mind. Rain no longer reminded him of hardship. It reminded him of change. It reminded him of the night he helped a stranger and unknowingly changed his own destiny. And as he parked in front of the workshop that would soon be his new place of work, he smiled at the sky and whispered quietly to himself, "Let's begin." Daniel's first day at the new job started before the sun came up. The sky was pale and quiet, and the air felt cool on his face as he stepped out of his small house. He had woken up extra early, unable to sleep from the excitement and nervousness running through him. His wife had ironed his shirt the night before, and his kids had hugged him goodnight with wide smiles, telling him he was going to do great. He stood beside his old pickup truck for a moment, just looking at it. That truck had seen everything: the long nights, the rain, the struggles, and the hopes. He patted the hood lightly and said under his breath, "We made it, old friend. Let's not break down today." The drive to the workshop was calm. The roads were half empty, and the early morning sun began to peek through thin clouds. Daniel felt a strange mix of emotions: pride, fear, joy, and disbelief all at once. He was going somewhere new, somewhere he never thought he'd belong. When he reached the service center, he took a deep breath before stepping out of the truck. The smell of oil, rubber, and freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Mechanics were already moving about, checking engines, wiping grease, and talking over the sound of tools clinking against metal. Peter, the man who had agreed to train him, waved from near the office door. "Morning, Daniel. You're early. That's a good start," he said cheerfully. Daniel smiled. "Couldn't sleep. Wanted to be sure I didn't get lost." Peter chuckled. "You'll fit right in. Come on, I'll show you around again." They walked through the workshop together. Peter introduced Daniel to the team, a mix of young and older mechanics, each with their own style and attitude. Some greeted him warmly, while others gave polite nods, curious about the new face. "This is your desk," Peter said, pointing to a small wooden table near the window. It had a computer, some folders, and a metal coffee mug. "For now, just watch and learn. I'll handle the main calls today. You'll see how things run." Daniel nodded, grateful and slightly overwhelmed. He wasn't used to having a desk or being in charge of anything. He spent most of the morning observing how Peter handled customers and organized the workflow. He watched carefully, noting how the workers respected Peter, but also how they leaned on him for almost everything. By afternoon, Peter handed Daniel a clipboard. "Your turn," he said. "A customer's waiting. Just listen, take notes, and tell one of the boys what needs doing." Daniel's stomach tightened a little, but he nodded. He walked over to the counter where a man stood waiting with a worried look. "Good afternoon, sir," Daniel greeted with a smile. "What seems to be the problem?" The man sighed. "The car shakes when I press the brakes. I've been to 2 garages already and no one could fix it." Daniel walked out to the parking area, crouched near the car and checked the front tires and brake pads. After a few minutes, he spotted the issue: uneven brake rotors. "It's not too bad," he said calmly. "We'll fix it for you. Might take about an hour." The man seemed surprised. "You sure?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, sir. I've seen this before." He passed the job order to one of the younger mechanics, who got to work right away. Peter watched from a distance, nodding approvingly. By the end of the day, the same customer came back smiling. "Drives like new," he said, handing Daniel a firm handshake. "You really know your stuff." When the man left, Daniel couldn't stop smiling. It wasn't just about fixing a car. It was the feeling of being trusted again, of being seen for his skill. As the days passed, Daniel learned quickly. Peter showed him how to manage orders, schedule jobs, and deal with suppliers. Daniel made mistakes here and there. Once he ordered the wrong set of parts, and another time he double-booked 2 repair slots. But instead of giving up, he stayed late to fix the problems. He wanted to prove that he could do this. The workers started warming up to him too. They saw how he never acted like he was above them. He worked beside them when things got busy, helped lift engines, cleaned the floor, and even shared his lunch. Slowly, they began to respect him not just as a manager, but as one of their own. One afternoon, while Daniel was checking paperwork, Peter walked into his office with a thoughtful look. "You're picking things up fast," he said. "You'll do well here, I can see that. I'm retiring next month, and the place will officially be yours." Daniel blinked, stunned. "Already?" Peter smiled. "You've earned it. Mr. Andrews thinks highly of you. He said you remind him of himself when he started out, honest and hard-working." Daniel didn't know what to say. He felt a lump in his throat again. "Thank you, Peter. I'll do my best to keep things running smoothly." Over the next few weeks, Daniel began to make small changes to improve the shop. He added a proper waiting area with chairs and coffee for customers. He started offering small discounts for repeat clients. He even created a system to keep track of every job, so no one forgot who was working on what. Customers noticed the difference. They started recommending the place to friends and neighbors. Slowly, the shop's reputation grew. One Friday evening, Mr. Andrews dropped by unexpectedly. The moment he walked in, the staff stood a little straighter. Daniel hurried out to greet him. "Good evening, sir," he said respectfully. Mr. Andrews smiled, looking around the clean and busy workshop. "Looks like the place is doing well." Daniel nodded. "The team's been great. Everyone's working hard." Mr. Andrews clapped him on the shoulder. "And that's because of you. People follow a leader who works beside them, not above them. You've made me proud." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest that words couldn't describe. He remembered the night he met this man, cold, wet, and broken down on the side of the road. He never would have imagined that same man would one day be praising him like this. As Mr. Andrews was leaving, he turned and said, "Oh, and Daniel, we're opening another branch in a few months. When the time comes, I'd like you to help train the new managers." Daniel's eyes widened. "Me train managers?" Mr. Andrews laughed. "Yes, you. You've got a good head and a good heart. That's what I need more of in this company." After he left, Daniel stood there for a long while, just taking it all in. The noise of the workshop faded in his ears, and all he could think about was how far he'd come. That night, when he got home, his wife could see the glow on his face before he even spoke. "Something good happened today, didn't it?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "He wants me to train new managers one day." "Can you believe that?" She smiled proudly. "I can. You've always been that man. You just needed someone to see it." He sat down at the table, surrounded by the laughter of his children, and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. For years, he had lived believing his life would never change. But kindness and a small, selfless act had opened a door to something greater than he could have imagined. Over the following months, Daniel continued to grow. He made sure the workers were treated fairly and that no customer left unhappy. Whenever someone new joined the team, he would tell them, "This job isn't just about fixing cars. It's about fixing trust. When people come here, they're worried, tired, sometimes even desperate. We make sure they leave smiling. That's our real work." His words stayed with everyone who heard them, and whenever the rain fell, Daniel couldn't help but look out the window and smile. It always reminded him of that night, the night everything changed. The rain no longer meant hardship or bad luck. It meant hope, kindness, and new beginnings. One evening, as he locked up the workshop, one of the younger workers said to him, "Sir, can I ask something?" "How did you get this job?" Daniel paused and looked at the boy, remembering his own struggles. "By stopping to help someone who needed it," he said simply. "Never ignore a chance to do good, no matter how small it seems. You never know where it might lead." The boy nodded slowly, clearly moved by the answer. Daniel walked to his old pickup still parked in the corner and smiled. It was old and rusty, but it was his reminder of how far life could take a person who refused to stop being kind, even when life was hard. As he drove home that night, the streets shimmered with reflections from the rain. He didn't rush. He just drove slowly, peacefully, with a quiet smile on his face. Because now he knew for sure. One act of kindness had rewritten the story of his entire life. Months passed, and Daniel's life slowly began to take a new shape. The days no longer felt heavy, and the nights were no longer filled with worry about how to make it through the next week. Things were still not perfect, but they were finally stable, something he hadn't felt in years. Every morning he woke up before the sun and looked out the small window of his home. The light that crept in no longer reminded him of long, hopeless days. It reminded him that life could change, that hard times didn't last forever. The workshop had become more than just a job for him. It was a place where he belonged, a place that carried pieces of his story in every corner. The smell of grease, the noise of wrenches, the laughter of the workers. It all felt like home. He had earned everyone's respect. The younger workers often came to him for advice, not just about cars, but about life. They saw him as someone who had lived through the storm and still managed to smile. One rainy morning, a new worker joined the team. He was a shy young man, nervous and unsure of himself. Daniel could see a bit of his younger self in the boy, struggling, scared, and full of quiet dreams. During lunch, the boy sat alone at the edge of the workshop. Daniel walked over with his sandwich and sat down beside him. "You getting used to the place?" he asked kindly. The boy nodded. "Trying to, sir. I just don't want to mess anything up." Daniel smiled. "We all mess up sometimes. That's how we learn." "You'll be fine." The boy hesitated before saying, "It's just, I've been out of work for months. My mom's sick and I need this job badly." Daniel looked at him thoughtfully. "You know something? I was in your shoes not too long ago. Broke scared and praying for a chance. One day I helped a man on the side of the road without expecting anything. That simple act changed everything for me. So don't lose hope. Keep doing your best. Good things find people who don't give up." The boy listened carefully, his eyes softening. He smiled a little and said, "Thank you, sir." I needed to hear that. From that day on, Daniel made sure to guide him just like Peter once guided him. It felt good to pass on what he had learned, not just about cars, but about life. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel's workshop became one of the best in the area. Customers came from nearby towns just because they trusted the honesty and kindness of the people who worked there. Daniel had created something that was more than a business. It was a place built on respect and compassion. One afternoon, while Daniel was going through papers in his small office, his phone rang. It was Mr. Andrews. "Daniel," the familiar voice said warmly, "I've got some news for you." Daniel straightened up in his chair. "Yes, sir?" "We're opening that new branch I told you about, and I'd like you to oversee the setup. I can't think of anyone better to train the new team." For a moment, Daniel couldn't speak. He had never dreamed of being trusted with something this big. "Sir, I don't know what to say," he finally managed. Mr. Andrews chuckled. "Say yes. You've earned it. You've built something wonderful here. It's time to help others do the same." Daniel agreed, his heart full of gratitude. That evening, when he told his family, his wife's eyes filled with tears again, not of worry this time, but of pride. His children jumped with excitement, hugging him tightly. "Does that mean we'll move, Dad?" his son asked eagerly. "Not right away," Daniel said with a smile. "But we'll visit the new place often. I'll be helping others learn what we do here." His wife placed her hand on his. "You've worked hard for this. You deserve every bit of it." Daniel nodded, but deep down he knew it wasn't just hard work that brought him here. It was that one rainy night, that small act of kindness that had opened a door he didn't even know existed. A few weeks later, Daniel visited the new location with Mr. Andrews. It was still under construction, the walls half-painted, the floors dusty, the smell of fresh cement in the air, but Daniel didn't see an unfinished building. He saw potential. He saw a future for people like him, men and women who just needed someone to believe in them. As he walked through the empty hall, Mr. Andrews spoke quietly beside him. "You know, Daniel, when you helped me that night, I was having one of the worst days of my life. My car broke down. I was late for a meeting, and I remember thinking that maybe I was too tired to keep doing what I was doing. Then you came along, soaking wet, tired, but still smiling, and you helped without expecting anything. That moment reminded me why I started my business in the first place. People like you are the reason we keep going." Daniel listened in silence, moved by the honesty in the man's voice. He had never realized how deeply that night had affected both of them. Mr. Andrews continued, "That's why I chose you. Not just because you're a good mechanic, but because you're a good person. You give people hope, Daniel, and this world needs more of that." For a moment, Daniel couldn't find words. All he could do was nod, his chest tight with emotion. "Thank you, sir," he finally said quietly. "I'll do my best to keep that alive." When Daniel returned home that evening, he sat on the porch with his wife, watching the sunset. The air was warm, and the sound of distant laughter came from the street. He leaned back, taking a deep breath. "You remember how everything started?" he asked with a soft smile. His wife nodded. "How could I forget? You came home soaked that night, and I almost scolded you for stopping to help a stranger." Daniel laughed gently. "And now that stranger is my boss and friend." They both sat in silence for a while, listening to the crickets. Then his wife said softly, "You know what's funny? You always thought we were unlucky, but maybe that rain wasn't bad luck after all." Daniel looked up at the sky. It was turning darker, and far in the distance he could see clouds gathering again. He smiled. "No," he said quietly. "It wasn't bad luck. It was a blessing in disguise." The following weekend, the family drove together to the new workshop to see how it was coming along. The kids ran around excitedly, laughing as they explored the half-finished building. Daniel watched them, his heart full. He walked around the lot, imagining where everything would go, the repair bays, the waiting area, the office. It reminded him of when he had first walked into his old workshop months ago, nervous and unsure. Now he was standing there as someone others looked up to. It wasn't fame or wealth that made him proud. It was the journey. The struggles, the lessons, and the kindness that carried him through it all. Later that evening, as they drove back home, the rain began to fall again. Soft at first, then heavier. The rhythmic sound of drops hitting the windshield filled the car. His wife glanced at him and smiled. "Looks like your lucky rain is back." Daniel smiled too, his eyes on the road ahead. "Yeah," he said softly. "It's followed us all the way here." He drove slowly, watching the lights reflect on the wet streets. In that moment, he didn't see rain as something that ruined plans or caused trouble. He saw it as a reminder that no matter how dark things got, there was always a chance for something beautiful to grow from it. When they reached home, Daniel stepped out of the truck and stood under the rain for a moment. His wife laughed from the doorway, calling him inside, but he just lifted his face to the sky and let the drops fall freely. He remembered that first night vividly, the broken car, the stranger's gratitude, the wet clothes sticking to his skin, and the quiet satisfaction of doing the right thing. Now, years later, he understood what that moment had truly meant. It wasn't luck or coincidence. It was life's way of showing him that even the smallest act of kindness could create ripples that reached far beyond what anyone could imagine. As the rain continued to fall, Daniel finally stepped back inside, closing the door behind him. His children were laughing, his wife was setting dinner, and the smell of warm food filled the air. He looked around at his family, the smiles, the comfort, the love, and felt an overwhelming peace in his heart. He had everything he needed. That night, as he sat by the window watching the rain pour down, he whispered softly to himself, "Thank you." Because in the end, it wasn't about fixing a car or getting a better job. It was about how one small moment of kindness changed everything. Not just for him, but for everyone his kindness would ever touch. And as the thunder rolled gently in the distance, Daniel smiled, knowing one simple truth. Sometimes the rain doesn't come to ruin your day. Sometimes it comes to wash away the past and make room for something new.